Strategy Corner, a show intended to equip you with the business principles to help you become the leader your organization requires. Our guests from top business schools, renowned consultancy firms, and forward-thinking leaders and executives will provide you with the contemporary business insights and principles to help you successfully navigate the complex world of business. And now, here's your host, Lekometsa Mogesi.
Hello and welcome to Strategy Corner. I'm your host, Lekometsa Mogesi. In our previous episode, James Steere shared with us the important concepts underlying social entrepreneurship.
Social entrepreneurship is applying business disciplines, opportunities, attracting capital from business, and using it in a way that tackles a big social challenge.
In this episode, James shares with us the finer details about iDrop Water.
So iDrop Water came about as an idea to try and use this purification technology to get it into channels where people are already doing their grocery shopping or buying other products and sell water by the litre.
Also joining us in studio is a special guest, Kate Theus.
My advice to those people who are interested in getting involved would be to basically figure out what part they want to play in the entire ecosystem.
James, thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you.
You were very kind enough in our previous segment to lay out a foundation about social entrepreneurship and why it's important. And now I want us to talk a little bit more about an example of an existing social enterprise. And there's no better way, or there's no other example I would think of other than iDrop Water, which is the company that you co-founded with your wife. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of iDrop Water?
Sure. So how I came to be in drinking water purification technology and ultimately this business is curious. I met my wife Kate at the University of Oxford at the business school. We were doing our MBAs, and following that we both went into kind of corporate life. I went into management consulting. Kate was working for a big, huge German pharmaceutical and medical devices company. So these sort of typical MBA style jobs. After a couple of years of consulting, I was ready to move into, proper business, for want of a better term. And I had an opportunity to join a new company that was distributing water filtration products into sub-Saharan Africa. A very interesting American technology. They wanted to grow a distribution business. So they brought me in to head that up. And through a number of years of really challenging work, including trying to strip cost out of this product, an incredibly efficient filtration system, I got to the point after about 3 years where I realized no matter how much cost you pull out of the product, the market for a product in Africa, in this territory, is very small. It's a very narrow group that can ultimately afford something for their household that will purify water. But the idea came about to say that if this technology is as good as I know it to be, can we not use that technology to purify water and sell the water instead? And that's where the idea for iDrop Water really came about. The great thing that job sort of showed me is it allowed me to go and encounter and experience the market firsthand. So I traveled a lot around Southern Africa, spent a lot of time in Zimbabwe, spoke to people about water challenges, learned a lot about it. So, I mean, the latest stats are staggering. It's 1.8 billion people drink contaminated water. They have no alternative. That's almost 1 in 4 people around the world. And as a result, just about every single minute someone dies from a disease that they would have caught from drinking unsafe water. So this is a huge, huge global challenge. I was committed after a while of working in this products company to try and solve this challenge. And I believe in the power of business to do that. But by selling products, I don't think you can ever get the price low enough to meet the demand from that segment of the population that desperately needs it the most. So iDrop Water came about as an idea to try and use this purification technology to get it into channels where people are already doing their grocery shopping or buying other products and sell water by the litre, which means that we could do it at a price that just about everyone can afford. And that a combination of these sort of core challenges and opportunities got us thinking. And by us, I mean myself and Kate, who we spoke about this all the time. We have business in common, having met at business school. And so for a long time, we tested ideas around this and came up with this concept of iDrop, which we then started about 2 years ago. So now, just to maybe explain what iDrop does, with that background is we were looking for a channel to market, which is critical. How do we get to hundreds of millions of people in due course? And in Africa, the thing that I experienced and noticed is that just about everywhere I traveled, there's a grocery store of some kind, big, small, mega supermarket or a small spaza shop or a little town store. And just about everywhere I went, I could see that people were buying bottled water, which was a very interesting signal to me. It means that somehow people there's an established supply chain of what is comparatively quite an expensive product, but people are buying it. So we needed to come up with a solution that used that channel, but that just introduced a whole lot more efficiency and thereby lowered the price. And so we built a machine that we now install in a grocery store of any size and any location at no cost to the shop owner. So you don't have to just be a big supermarket with a lot of money. You can be a small owner-run kiosk somewhere. Our machine will install that. As long as the shop owner can provide a water source, our machine will purify that water, and that shop owner can now sell water by the litre to shoppers that will come and refill their own multi-use water containers. At the end of the month, we then charge for 50% of the sales revenue that's gone through that machine. And we're able to do that. And this is the kind of really key innovation we introduced, because we put a SIM card in each of our machines. So we know we don't have to have an army of people looking after this. We know in real time, wherever our machines are, how much water is being sold. We know if the machine is, if there's any problems with the machine, we can diagnose that remotely and quite often fix it. And that's what we're doing. We're growing this fleet of water purification machines through grocery stores that enable shop owners to sell water by the litre at an incredibly low price. So our price in South Africa is R1 a litre, which about 7 US cents for a litre of safe drinking water, which is a price that just about everyone can afford. So that's the background of our business and what brings us here.
I just want to talk about the bottled water story, because I think it's fascinating that in many underprivileged communities, you have all these tech shops, spaza shops that sell bottled water. So now there is a challenge as someone who is struggling whether to buy bread or buy bottled water, which is pretty much expensive. So you guys came up with this product, obviously, that sort of tries to solve that. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, we don't necessarily have to replace the bottled water industry. We think there are some inherent inefficiencies in that business and that structure. It's in some ways it's a bit like electricity. Solar power enables people to generate electricity with the sun where it's being consumed, in a household, for instance, or in a shop. You don't need the big centralized generation and transmission through cables. Water, in our mind, drinking water is similar, and you either have a centralized treatment plant that then sends water out into households through pipes, or in the case of bottled water, they've got a bottling plant. They then have to put that bottle, they have to fill it up, purify the water, and then put it on a truck and send it long, long distances to the shop. There are inefficiencies in that business model that we can, to some extent, leapfrog by doing the purification in the store. There's almost always a water source of some kind near enough by, and by doing that, we strip out all of the cost in that value chain. So that's what we've adjusted. People at certain income levels are always going to want to buy bottled water. But what we think is very important is to start introducing some choice, and particularly at a completely different price point. So we live between a municipal water supply and at the kind of bottom end, and bottled water at the top end. We offer a competitive alternative within that sort of spectrum of the drinking water universe of product.
I know you touched on this a little bit, but I want us to focus on the iDrop Water's business ecosystem, like your target, your operating model, like, and all the stakeholders involved?
Sure. So for us, we differentiate between our customer and our consumer. So our consumer is typically a shopper. It's anyone in the public who has identified that they would like to buy safe drinking water as opposed to getting it from any other source that they have, be it a municipal supply or borehole or something like that. That's driven by uncertainty around water quality, and this is a growing trend. So that's our consumer. It's the person who consumes our water. But in order to get to that consumer, the channel we've chosen is through grocery stores. So the grocery store ultimately is our customer. So we have to talk to a customer and essentially come up with a kind of partnership where they will put a machine of ours in their store, they'll provide a water source, and then they'll drive sales to their shoppers. So that's how our ecosystem works. We build the machine. We've got a really sophisticated now supply chain. We bring in components from all over the world and assemble them here in South Africa. We've had to design a whole lot of that very specifically for this machine. We're dealing with some really challenging things. We need an electricity supply, so we can run our machine off solar power. We're dealing with water, which is always challenging, and we're dealing with cell phone networks because we need the signal to come through. So on the supply side, we've spent a long time making sure our machine works through many, many iterations. Our first 6 months was just very frustrating because the machine would break and we'd have to fix it and then improve it. And we did this. We iterated fast. So the supply chain is now well set up, and we're growing our relationship with grocery stores. And through them, we then can sell to our consumer, which is the person who needs safe drinking water.
I want us to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of starting a social enterprise. Are there any specific challenges to a social enterprise that are unique to a social enterprise than a normal enterprise? Things like product and market fit, access to capital. Are there any specific challenges that are very particular to a social enterprise?
I think there definitely are. I mean, it's starting a business, be it a social enterprise or a normal business, always tough. There's no question. The issue of funding is there are always these stories about how tough it is to raise money and how you've got to get very comfortable with being rejected by funders. I wish I could say that wasn't true. It is absolutely true. We've lost count now of how many times we've been turned down approaching investors. But I think that exists across the board. I think what makes it maybe a little bit more difficult in social entrepreneurship is that there aren't many examples because we're tackling social challenges. There aren't many examples of similar businesses that we can draw on and kind of shortcut with investors. We have to start a conversation about something that they will never have heard of before, and so quite often investors they zone out before you can really get to their attention because it's something unfamiliar. So funding, I think, is tough. There are impact funds that are emerging that are trying to target social entrepreneurial ventures. Quite often they have something in mind that they're looking for. So if you are something really new, you may not fit with their investment mandate. So raising cash is tough. On the other side, because it's something so new, if the social challenge didn't exist, well, there would be solutions already dealing with it. Quite a lot of what we've had to develop for our machine, the hardware, some of the software we've had to have written, it doesn't exist. And so we've had to create that and find experts who can help us build something quite unusual. So it requires quite a lot of innovation and quite a lot of really strange thinking about these challenges. And then I think one of the key things we've tried to do is because there's all of this uncertainty, there's no point trying to over-design something before you get it into the market. We need the market to tell us what we're doing right and wrong. So we put our first machines in, and looking back, we're horrified at how basic they were and how many things we hadn't thought of and how quickly they broke. And they broke frequently. And every time they broke, we'd fix it and improve the design. And we did this enough times to a point now that our machine works, it works fantastically well. One of my favorite quotes from a business school professor who taught us entrepreneurship is that if you're not embarrassed by your first commercial prototype, you haven't done it fast enough. So we are kind of example of that. We've iterated as quickly as possible, used the market to tell us where we're going right or wrong, and just solved as many challenges as quickly as we could.
One of the challenges in social entrepreneurship is measurement, impact measurement. I mean, it's easy to do the financial measurement, but the impact is slightly tricky. How do you envision that iDrop Water is going to do the measurement for the impact that it's doing around?
You're right. It is tough measuring impact. It's something that hasn't, in our minds, fully been resolved by the kind of impact community. There are a number of different approaches to it. We are lucky in some ways in that because our machines are connected wherever they are, we get a huge amount of data from each one of them. So every time anything happens to one of our purification devices in a grocery store, we get that data. So if someone presses one of the buttons to fill their water container, we know when it was, we know, a whole lot about that interaction, and we have a database now which is enormous. In addition, we know if there's been a power outage because our backup battery will kick in. We know if there's a water outage. We know so a lot of that data that we gather from our machines drives how we can assess our impact. So we can tell with some accuracy how much water we have saved using our technology compared to other technologies which aren't quite as efficient. Or if we assume that people were either going to buy our product or they were going to buy 5-liter bottles of water. Well, we know how much plastic waste we've reduced as a result. So we are in a useful position to draw some really clear conclusions from this huge amount of data that we gather. But even with all that data, it's not simple. So it's challenging, but you need to find ways of assessing that impact, because if as is our core reason for being there, we need to understand how much impact we're having. It's the reason we do this in the way that we do it. We have to be profitable, but we need to know that in that profitability we are driving this social improvement.
So there are 3 impacts, if I may say it, that iDrop Water is really doing, providing safe drinking water to people who may not have access to safe drinking water, and also reducing the, every bottled water that gets dispensed somewhere, does some pollution, I think. And also empowering the local entrepreneurs in the communities because of this shared model of profit.
That's exactly right. We can measure very accurately, obviously, how much people are buying our water through grocery stores. That's very simple data to check. To date, we've sold over 500,000 litres of safe water in this way. But you're absolutely right. One of the key elements of our business is that we share revenue with the shop owner. So we're not just profiting ourselves. We are helping local grocery store owners generate really high gross margin revenue by selling this water. So there's a community economic improvement element to what we do as well. And then these various environmental waste metrics we cover as well. So we look at likely carbon reduction. In shipping bottles of water, for instance, they have to get from A to B on a truck. And even if those bottles are recycled, they need to be transported. And there's a whole lot of energy consumed. So carbon reduction, water waste reduction, plastic waste reduction. So that's actually exactly right. Those 3 categories are how we would assess our impact.
I know you have operations in Zimbabwe and Botswana. What is in the horizon for iDrop Water?
That's a great question. I mean, we are now seeing demand coming in from all over the world. We're trying to figure out how to scale that. Scale is the next challenge, I think, for us. We've spent a long time making sure the product works, that our platform is stable. And we've intentionally gone and piloted in other countries. So we've run a pilot up in Ghana. And that's because when the time comes to scale, there's no point realizing that you have to redesign the whole system or the entire business. We've tested in those markets early to understand what we don't know about them. And we've had to make some changes to our reporting system and our hardware. So I think we're focusing right now on growing around South Africa. We think there's a huge opportunity still locally, and we need to build that solid foundation. Zimbabwe is a market that we're also growing into fast. it's a country that needs what we have for, not just the water, but the price point that we can offer. And then I think towards the end of this year, we're going to start really putting the foot down and growing up into Africa. But ultimately, this platform we've created, which combines remote water purification and GSM communication that can be run off solar power, it's got application all over the world. And that's our ultimate ambition, is to really take this to any market anywhere in the world that has this water challenge and that we can start solving. It's a huge, we look at a market of 1.8 billion people. It's sad in a way that exists, but as a business, as an opportunity, it's incredible that we could get out there and help in a way that is profitable and sustainable.
I know in the coming weeks, you guys are headed to Los Angeles for the Shivers competition. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So, maybe some advice to people starting social entrepreneurship companies or trying to grow them is there's an emerging kind of ecosystem around social entrepreneurship, and a lot more companies are identifying it as something that they want to back in various ways. And that's not just always in terms of funding or investment. So Shivers and Pernod Ricard, their parent company, has globally taken the view that they are trying to support social entrepreneurship. And so they have a competition they run every year. It's called The Venture. And each Shivers Regal country operation selects one company to represent their country and go to a global competition. So iDropWater is very fortunate to win this. And so we're heading over to Los Angeles to compete against 29 other countries in a couple of weeks' time. And it's exciting. I mean, they've put a huge amount of money into it as a prize, but also what is helpful to smaller starting or growing social entrepreneurs is the amount of PR and support they give. So it's not just a prize. It's not just a pat on the back and a handshake. They really get involved to try and help grow your business and increase your market exposure. It's an amazing opportunity. So I really would encourage people to look out for this type of competition, and specifically the Shivers Venture. I think this is a really good one. And I'm not just saying it because we won it. I think objectively is one to apply to.
Yeah. We wish you all the best with that. I have a belief that iDrop, with the amazing work that you guys are doing, will win that competition.
Thank you so much. I really, that would be a thrill. Kate is coming with me, my wife and co-founder, and she's very much the CEO of the business. So I think she's coming over just to enjoy it and also to make sure I do well enough. My key performance indicators for the year, I think, are on the line. So
I would be remiss, really, not to give Kate an opportunity to share some of her ideas. Kate, there's a challenge in social entrepreneurship in terms of lack of funding and lack of talent. There's not enough talent into the social entrepreneurship space, and you come from one of the best business schools in the world, highly talented, but you chose to get involved in a social enterprise. What would be your advice to some of the talented people out there who are very skeptical about getting involved in social entrepreneurship adventures?
My advice to those people who are interested in getting involved would be to basically figure out what part they want to play in the entire ecosystem. So, for example, my background, I did go to a very good business school in the U.S., very for-profit focused. So I spent years working in for-profit industries. Then I went through to Oxford, where I met James, and focused much more on the social entrepreneurship side of things, which actually led me into the nonprofit world for quite a while. And then speaking to James for the past 2 or 3 years ago about this new idea that he had, kind of really started to understand how amazing it would be to be in a business and in an industry where you could actually do both. You could help people and you could actually generate a profit and you could run sustainably. Because having been in both worlds, I know how it is to make money and I know how it is to run out of money in a nonprofit company. And I know how important it is to have a vision and a mission and actually chase them with everything that you've got and not have to depend on other people. So for me, it was more of a personal decision that this was an amazing idea. and I wanted to do this. And we had a moment in time. And that's my first piece of advice. If there's a moment in time where you have a great idea, even if you don't have the funds behind you personally to do it, find a way to make it happen. I mean, that's what we did. We started this with practically nothing, worked from our house for ages, made plans when we needed to. And basically, that's the first piece of advice. Go all in. Make sure it's a good idea. Make sure you understand how it's gonna make money, how it's gonna survive, and go do it. If you are not fortunate enough to have an amazing idea just yet, find a way to be part of the industry. Go and join local groups of social entrepreneurs. I mean, we've recently been introduced to the Impact Hub in Johannesburg, and they support local social entrepreneurship companies. Find a way to work for a social entrepreneurship company or volunteer for one. Find a way to be involved in your local, if you're in school, find a way to be involved in those types of clubs and initiatives. There's always a way to be involved if you're interested. So even if you don't have that idea right now, make it a passion. And eventually you will come across something that sounds like a great idea, or you can be part of someone else's amazing idea.
So in terms of iDrop Water's idea, which one came first, the head or the heart?
That's a great question. I think I was amazed. So when James first came to me with that idea, I always think about things first. So I mean, for me, it's an intellectual exercise for a little bit of time, just to kind of figure out exactly how much impact you could have and exactly how it would actually work. Because I've seen so many types of companies, I've worked in so many different industries, and the minute I kind of figured out exactly what we could be capable of, then it turned into a passion. So in order to make this work, you put so much on the line. It has to be a good idea. So for me, it was thinking it through and then actually going and doing it like with everything I had. James was actually fortunate enough to travel through quite a lot of African countries, especially Zimbabwe, and seeing the actual impact of the lack of safe drinking water had on people. So I think he started it the opposite way. He saw the actual social issue and then came up with a thing that would actually solve it. So that's part of why we work well together, though. We always kind of take the opposite approach and we meet in the middle.
Yeah, that's very interesting, yeah. Do you perhaps have any closing remarks, any advice to anyone listening out there?
Sure, I can take that. I think we always say when we talk about this that entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship is not for everyone. What you've maybe heard a bit of today is us putting our best face on what we've achieved so far. But it is really, really challenging and really tough. It's also incredibly rewarding. So having said that it's that difficult and that's not for everyone, don't be discouraged, because the reward in seeing the impact you have through a company you have founded and you're growing is personally, I can't imagine doing anything else. I like to sometimes say that I'm cured of corporate life, because I don't know how I could ever have, in some of our better days where we can go and experience our impact and talk to people, it's an incredibly powerful and fulfilling thing. So it's not for everyone, but if you are passionate about it and if you have a great idea, make sure there's a good business behind it, and if you can, find a Kate who will make sure the business is the disciplines are there and the rigor and the thought is attached to the passion and the good concept. Go for it. And if you do go for it, as Kate said, you've got to be ready to go all in. It becomes your life. But it's incredibly rewarding. I get to go to work every day with my best friend, and we go and do amazing things. But we never stop working. That's the other side of it. But I can't talk enough about how powerful it is as a sector to get involved in. So go for it. We can't wait to see more brilliant ideas coming out of South Africa. My final point, aim big. Don't just look for solutions that you think are going to work in your community or in your country. South Africa can drive real global change. We've got challenges here, but we've also got really powerful talent. And you will start meeting people who share these ideas and visions and ambitions. These have global applications, so aim big. And yeah, we just can't wait to see this just taking off in South Africa.
Guys, thank you so much for coming to the studio and sharing this amazing story of iDrop Water. We at Strategy Corner wish you all the best with the amazing work that you guys are doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
That was James Steere, a co-founder of iDrop Water, who shared with us the mission and vision of iDrop Water, a for-profit, mission-driven company established to bring safe, affordable drinking water to everyone, everywhere. If you have any suggestions about the show or want to recommend any future topics and guests, please email me at lekometa@strategycorner.co.za.
Thank you for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and found the material to be of great value to you. If you'd like to get more information about Strategy Corner and the services we offer, please email info@strategycorner.co.za, lekometa@strategycorner.co.za. You can also follow us using the handle @Strategy Corner on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the latest on Strategy Corner. Till next time, goodbye.